Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed, where conversations are designed for nonprofit leaders by nonprofit leaders to inspire, educate, and motivate. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories, tactical insights, and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us for real talk with real people. Jarrett and her guests unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets of effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Welcome back, my nerdy friends. I am so glad you're here, and I'm really excited to share today's conversation with you. Today's guest is Scott Stanley, and he has joined me to discuss his work with the North American Association of Visionary Churches and Arizona Yahe Assembly, along with the complex legal, organizational, and advocacy challenges surrounding psychedelic churches and religious freedom. In this conversation, Scott shares insights from a 6-year legal battle. He also talks about what it takes to navigate long-term advocacy efforts, build coalitions, and create legitimacy for emerging movements, working within highly regulated and evolving spaces. We also explore organizational structure, governance best practices, and the importance of identifying champions who can help move specific projects and initiatives forward. Scott offers a unique perspective on leadership, collaboration, and the operational realities of building organizations within a rapidly changing landscape. This is a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that you will as well. And before we jump in, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to Bloomerang for sponsoring this season and making these meaningful conversations possible. Enjoy the conversation here with Scott Stanley. Well, hey there and welcome. I am really excited because today's guest is Scott Stanley. Scott and I met, it's probably been a couple of months ago, but I've been following your organization, really wanting to learn more about you and the services that you offer. So let's start off there, Scott. I would love it if you would please tell us, because I'm sure many of our listeners, this is their first time meeting you, but tell us a little bit about yourself, Scott, and a little bit about your role in the nonprofit sector today.
Most welcome. Thanks, Jarrett. Thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm director for the North American Association of Visionary Churches, and we support various visionary churches around the U.S. We're a 501c3, and so our focus has been legal support in key cases around the U.S. So we're aiming for increased legitimacy for visionary churches, but at the same time being able to support those churches at the grassroots level.
Yeah, and you are doing a lot of work. I get your weekly newsletter. Advocacy is not something, Scott, that I've ever really delved in my nonprofit career. So you are working through several issues. Some are still emerging. So when an issue really, is still emerging, and maybe the issue is not widely understood, there could be stigma around it. There could be lack of education and knowledge. From your standpoint, what does it take for, the ability to move an issue, I'm thinking from the margins into legitimate policy conversations to make that change? What are you seeing and experiencing there?
I should probably add that, I'm also director for the Arizona Yahe Assembly. It's an ayahuasca church. So we've got those two going, and churches are granted nonprofit status, of course, from the get-go. So we are a nonprofit in Arizona. Arizona Yahe Assembly is a nonprofit in Arizona. How do you work with legitimate people, right? Our ayahuasca church has work with Melbourne University and Imperial College of London in developing it and allowing them to step in and study what we're doing. And what they're finding is that the effect within the frame of Arizona Yahweh Assembly within our ceremonies is highly efficacious by their standards and the research standards. So Imperial College of London hasn't published their study yet, but Melbourne University, in tandem with Arizona State University, has. That's a good place to start. Why we've been working on that front, also working with other churches. We've done some recent outreach to Jack Bergman's office in Michigan and Ruben Gallego's office in Arizona. Why? Because they're pushing legislation to support combat veterans through the use of psychedelics inside of the VA, and that helps to sort of shift the dialogue. And although our churches work in the context of, I think, of spiritual healing, we understand that within the psychedelic space there is legitimate therapeutic application that shifts the dialogue. And so our churches aren't engaged in therapy. So they recognize this kind of divine equation that focuses on the non-material that we have, like, that we're beings with souls. We're animated by the spirit, and then we're not just bags of chemicals. But the VA is recognizing that to a certain extent as a policy initiative. Good for them. Mm-hmm. And in tandem with that, they're open to bringing psychedelics in the same way that Rick Perry has supported the Ibogaine initiative, Kentucky initiative, that was then voted and affirmed in Texas. So now you have Texas is supporting Ibogaine, which is a psychedelic. It's used for getting people off of opiates and other highly addictive substances. And it's excellent for addiction. And so I think that's very likely to work. It's going to be working its way through phase trials in the FDA. I'm just scratching the surface. We've got the executive order that came through, like apparently out of nowhere, Trump's executive order that legitimizes research for psychedelics effectively across the board. And so we're going to see more grant funding. We're going to see more research. We're going to see more investigation. We'll very likely see a change in CSA scheduling. All these elements layer. We've been working with key researchers, participating in the dialogue, showing up to these psychedelic conferences like the MAPS conference. 2 years ago, they had 12,000 people. It's extraordinary. And the stories that were told, I mean, I could go on to some length. So early on for us, and I've been working with ayahuasca since 2008. So I've seen this evolution of where it's at stage by stage. There was a certain point at which I was my mindset was, we have our experts, they have theirs. And so, within, so we relied on our experts in terms of making our case. And we understood that, like, from direct experience, the value of what we were doing, and for the people we're talking, the value of what we're doing. But in order to build coalitions, we tend to reach out to people and have conversations that sometimes just fail. They just crater. People weren't interested. We tried to build participate in other people's coalitions? And then, nah. So we had to build our own. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. So we started there, and then we found that people were willing to join us. And then once people joined us, the coalitions that kind of kicked us out or didn't want anything to do with us kind of changed their mind. And it was interesting. Yeah, their dialogue shifted. So, I'm sorry. I wanted something. There's just so much there, Jarrett.
There's so much. Yeah, and there's a lot of evolution. Yes, our current President Trump, made executive order. So there's a lot in this conversation right now. I want to ask you, Scott, how you approach decision making when often the stakes are high. The data is sometimes incomplete or false. You previously told me about a report that came out that was like completely inaccurate, not authored, not, anything scientific. And sometimes public opinion is still forming, just as you mentioned, you going to coalitions and them not really being receptive to you, but then their, standpoint might change. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. So the question is, how do you approach this decision-making at this time with everything going on?
Well, I can give you a good example. I'm going to work backwards. So here's the good example. Arizona Yahweh Assembly in tandem with the North American Association of Visionary Churches sued the DEA 6 years ago. And we sued them for on the basis of free practice. So we'd had Arizona Yahweh Assembly had a few seizures, multiple seizures, and so we sued them on that basis. So that gave us standing. We went to federal district court in Phoenix and made our case. We went through 6 different judges, I think, in the end. They quit. They recused themselves. One of them kicked us out of California and kicked us over to Arizona. Some of them just dropped out. We never knew why. So we went through all. We ended up with federal judge Humatewa, the first female Hopi federal judge in the U.S. And so we thought, okay, we have a fair shake here. At least you very likely may understand. She came down with a ruling requiring us to produce an entire membership list. The names, the emails, telephone numbers, everything. And there was a protective order in place. And so she said, look, don't worry about it. There's a protective order in place. Like, the only people that are going to see that information is going to be the lawyers, the DOJ, and the DEA. So what's the harm? And just a few people at the DEA. And of course, anybody with any common sense who's had any experience, nobody trusts the DEA. I don't even think the DEA trusts the DEA. I mean, they're like the scandals that have broken out inside the DEA and the number of investigations that they've had to run on themselves should give you evidence of that. Nobody trusts the DEA. Yeah. And so
that's a high stake.
It's very high stake. And so we were facing a deadline with sanctions. And if we didn't produce this, that ruling came down April 28th, I think, from the judge. And we were out of time. We couldn't do it. She was tired of our needless delays, and we had to produce it. We had 2 weeks. May 12th, yesterday, had to be produced, or else not only is our organization sanctioned, I'm sanctioned, our judges are sanctioned. Excuse me, our lawyers are sanctioned based on the judge's ruling.
Right.
So there are your stakes. Now, how do you navigate that? What's the decision making process? We were into decision, into decision mode, we had to address it. We had less than 24 hours because the day after her decision, there was another ruling handed down by the Supreme Court. It's called the first choice. And in that decision, in a unanimous decision, the SCOTUS ruled that faith-based organizations in particular, but nonprofits overall, are injured when the court demands their membership lists.
Oh, yeah.
Effectively stating you can't demand membership lists. And the very act of demanding those membership lists creates injury, a chilling effect on donations. It has a direct impact. And so we weren't going to release the names of our members, over 5,000, and hand those over to a federal court that doesn't understand that issues about parallel construction or how information leaks out is then used out in other investigations, how there have been multiple hacks of federal courts. That information is not secure. It's not secure from the National Security Agency. We've got people who come through ceremony who have the security clearances, and they have issues. Like, I could go into some length, but there are all sorts of holes in trying to lock down data in the federal court. But beyond that, beyond the fact that nobody trusts the DA, including the DA, it's just the court has, federal court, Supreme Court has ruled just amending those lists creates a chilling effect on donors and people trying to participate. We've certainly seen it. It had a chilling effect on our legal team. They were facing sanctions. So how are we going to navigate? We've been in the case 6 years. And day before yesterday, we had to decide whether they were going to dismiss the case or not. And we decided that we were going to dismiss the case rather than give up our membership lists.
Wow.
Right? That was navigating this. Like, the legal team was in an uproar. There was a lot of tension. We had to get our heads clear, get focused, and make a clear decision. And in the end, I think all of our decision-making team within the legal team, myself, I'm more than happy with the decision. I'd much rather stick to our guns and protect our members than have the court run roughshod over us, and to give up the very thing that we're fighting for in this case, essentially to protect our.
Well, what a story, because that is, I don't know if stakes get much higher than that, Scott. And I appreciate you sharing how you got to the final decision and how timely it is. What about oversight? I want to ask you about meaningful oversight, and in particular, what that looks like in spaces where innovation is moving, often faster than regulation. How do you maintain that meaningful oversight?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was reflecting on that, and I think the way to get to good oversight is to get to good insight. So if you've got small teams that are engaging in for themselves, for the individuals in those teams, for gaining meaningful insight, then that meaningful insight is then can be dialogued in a collegial, open, honest fashion with the members inside of that group. If you get a small group working with on any given topic, they're gaining insight. Then that insight can be translated into oversight. And first within a small group, then it can be coalesced into language that is applicable to the group and governance, and then through coalition building, of that insight and the insights of other organizations that are in a similar field, other nonprofits that have shared principles and focus and best practices. Those best practices, like those informed principles, those insights on what's meaningful for them and how to regulate the healthy procedures within their organizations. Those insights are then can be shared, developed into best practices, and then the regulators can come along and they can learn from the organizations themselves. How do you do that? Well, you reach out to legislators, and we've certainly done that recently. It's just a fragment of what we do, but I think if we're going to be regulated, we need to inform regulators. We learn from them; they can learn from us, and so this is cross-educational strategy. So we reached out to Jack Bergman's office and Ruben Gallego's office as in the Senate. Why? Because they're proposing legislation to put psychedelic clinics inside of the VA, and this is their Excellence Act for psychedelics. That legislation is being sponsored by Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate. It's happening now, right as it's being proposed. About a month after it was proposed, the president signed off in this executive order for advancing psychedelics research. So all those elements are coming together. Without the insights of the individuals being able to then chronicle the narratives, the individual stories, without those organizationals and that continued outreach, oversight would have had no place to stand. Oversight would have been uninformed in the same way that the DEA had concocted false research and then tried to insert that into their policy statements, and it was finally drawn out in another court case under a FOIA request. And so, in other words, if you don't have truthful, genuine insight, the alternative isn't very pretty. It's people making stuff up and then simply relying on that. So you end up with bad policy, and that everybody knows is bad, but they put up with it because there's no counter narrative. The counter narrative, it's based, it's truth based, if it's essentially honest with groups that are sincere and working honestly between other groups, results in executive orders, new legislation, effective work. Everyone sees it's true, and then eventually the old policy has to give way.
I love the insight to help develop meaningful oversight. Mic drop statement right there. Definitely, Scott. So let's move into where our listeners might be able to move to next. So based on your experience, that of your coalition and the others that are working with you, what do you believe that nonprofit and civic leaders, can learn from how complex issues that you've been dealing with, their own issues, likely not the same, but something else. So how can we learn from complex issues? How can we gain traction or face this resistance that we're being faced with within these legislative systems? I started this conversation saying this advocacy legal work is not something I've ever really been involved in. I don't have that experience. You mentioned it's a fraction of what you do, but based again, Scott, on your experience, what should we be doing? What should we be learning when it comes to these complex issues?
The it is, I guess, the question is, how do you reduce complexity without oversimplifying? And I think it gets down to focus, purpose, and how you organize and run outreach. A great way to do that is to start with small groups, identifying champions. You notice that groups run well if they have clear purpose. You have focus. If you have clear purpose, whatever the whatever the goal is, then you have you can produce kind of a raison d'etre. Now, how do you identify your champions for the for that? Well, you're going to work within your own network. You might go to LinkedIn. You might work outside of your network in order to find champions that can help to spearhead your effort. That's going to help to reduce complexity and some of these issues. Complexity can be compounded when you got a learning curve ahead of you. So you find people that know. And so, as we've gone along, we've picked up the phone and we've done our outreach. And some of that is information gathering, talking with guys like Jonathan Coldman, who headed up the Santo Daime and had his own federal case, was very helpful to us because they won their case. Or reaching out to Jeffrey Bronfman, who won his federal case and brought his ayahuasca church all the way to the Supreme Court. Finding the right lawyers who could then spearhead our case, and work on that project basis was helpful. And then within our own organization, you can't do it all. You need you need a steering committee, and these are some of the things that we're exploring right now. You need a steering committee. You need the people to find the people that you need, and you can reach into an organization. If you don't, you can't scale. You can't build out. You'll have a small group of people that's trying to do everything, and they can't. And the alternative is that you have some projects or ideas, but they don't get any traction because nobody really wants to do it. You need somebody who really wants to drive a project forward. And once you have one person, they can bring in another, and you can then expand to you're organizationally. You can do more. The ideas that come up within your organization, the things that you're passionate about. You find the person that's passionate about it. They bring somebody else. They work in partnership, and then they drive it forward. And for a small nonprofit, that might be, one of our key initiatives is to something called the Sister Maloka Project, where here's the thought experiment. You take 100 Malokas and you put them 10 miles apart. Maloka is a ceremonial roundhouse where ayahuasca is consumed. So you take 100 of those Malokas and you put them 10 miles apart. Then that can stretch 1,000 miles across the burn line in Brazil. We've already started a conservancy down in Peru, but there are other organizations that do similar things. They just haven't thought of it as a Sister Maloka project where you support what's already happening on the ground in the Amazon so that people don't have to turn to clear cutting and burning. They can drink ayahuasca, which they already do. They can show the people that come down from the States or from around the world about master plans, and they can take their knowledge and pass it along, and they can make it sustainable. And they're not a bunch of do-gooders trying to change things. all you're doing is supporting what's already going on the ground. And so being able to reach out to, but to make that happen, what's become clear for us is that we need a champion for that particular project. We're working with our veterans. We have a veteran ceremony coming up in 2 weeks. We had a spin-off group called iEmission. Some guys had come through. They were veterans. They got a lot out of it, and they started an organization to bring veterans into ayahuasca ceremonies. So they're a sponsoring organization for a ceremony that we'll have in 2 weeks, where the veterans stay over the course of the weekend, and it's totally transformable. That was an example of a project where we had a clear champion that went on, started small, and grew it out from there. I'm not sure if that clearly answered that particular question, but it's really tangential, it's also central. Like the organization building, in order to deal with these complex issues, to create simplicity, starts with the simplicity of the governance of the organization itself. You can't deal with complex issues unless you get. One of the best ways to deal with complex issues is to have focused teams that are small, that are passionate about a project, that can then support other members of your organization, either inside the organization or in cross-correlation with each other in coalition building.
Yeah. And I'm hearing simplify the complexity of it, right? Like really narrow it down into having, as you mentioned, that steering committee, that one champion to lead that steering committee, have them bring someone, have those someones bring someone's, and it really grows that ripple effect. Scott, you have been a phenomenal guest. And again, as I said at the top of the conversation, I'm sure some people are just learning about you and your organization for the very first time. So if you would, Scott, share with us, how can we find you? How can we learn more about you as well as the organization and the coalition?
If you want to learn more about the North American Association of Visionary Churches, you can visit NAAVC.org. If you want to learn more about Arizona Yahweh Assembly or Ayahuasca Church, you can go to ayaguide.org. Pretty simple. And we've got lots of information in both. We have a listing of the various projects that we're working on, some of the things that we're doing around the world. And if people are interested in stepping into an ayahuasca ceremony, we have some information there as well. If they want to participate and help, there's easy points of contact. And if people want to make a donation to any of the projects we're working on, there's an easy way to do that as well. But, far more than that, if they want to support, or people are passionate about any particular whatever, if they think they might be able to support us through their skill set or their organization, there's a very good likelihood that we can support them as well. And so any outreach that is most welcome. Cross coalition support for with other nonprofits is key. So by virtue of just going to our site, you'll also be able to go to our social media platforms and make outreach, or just give us a call. And once you get to the site, and someone will pick up, and we can get the dialogue going. And so I'd see this as an opportunity to be able to reach out to other nonprofits and share some best practices and share resources.
Absolutely. And I hope that our listeners take that to heart and will do that. One final question, Scott. I saved this one for the last. Is there a final takeaway, sage advice, anything that you want to leave our listeners with today as we wrap up the conversation? Anything you want to leave them with?
I think, we touched on one of the things we touched on is in order to get good oversight, you need good insight. That's start there. Support the honest dialogue within your group, supporting people's sincere expression of conscience. explore what that means to have open dialogue. Is if you have open dialogue and clear purpose inside of your organization, you have your mission statement, and then you've got your small groups, you've got your resource groups, and you've got your project groups, and then the resource groups can support the project groups. Like each department, each group or special team has got a clear purpose. Being able to to gather and encourage clear insight helps to establish esprit de corps. You have esprit de corps, then you have clear intent. Clarity of intent is going to build your organization, and people become like you want to inspire the your people. And there is my view is that inspiration is power. It is raw power, and so you can hunt inspiration, and your people in small teams can go out in the world and they can hunt inspiration. They find the people that are inspired. They can tell others about their story, and then you get inspired. If you don't know and you're in a quandary about something, you're up against some like legislative heat, or you've got or you got a court case, or you're trying to get some traction, find the people who've done it before, who've got some models, and reach out to them and give them a call and check in. Hunt inspiration. And then you're going to find that's like the best oversight is good insight. All right. And so that you can inform the political organizations, or you can inform legislative bodies. You can form the courts. You can form anybody that's engaged in oversight with clear insight. So that's my takeaway. You start with the individual insight, and then you find a way to get people communicating honestly and clearly, and then you get inspired and you help to inspire others. So that's my view. Thanks for the opportunity.
I love it. And I'm feeling inspired as well. So thank you so very much, Scott. It's phenomenal to have you on to talk about this and to bring your conversation and what you're doing into a little bit more mainstream. I'm a supporter. I want to see more good happening in our world. So Scott, thank you for all that you do. And thank you for being a guest and opening up in this way to me and to all of the listeners. I appreciate you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Jarrett. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you. So hope to be able to talk with you soon. And thanks again for inviting me onto your podcast. You are truly the nonprofit nerd.
Why, thank you. I appreciate that.